Beta Upsilon Chi, Bucks, presents Man to Men, the premier audio journal for men who live faithfully and lead courageously. I'm Jared Musgrove, and today we welcome Adam Flynt and Zack Morgan. Adam is the vice president of Acts 29 Church Planting, and Zack's the church planting director at Acts 29. They are here today to talk with you guys over the question, how can I know if I'm called to plant a church? That's a big question, and I can't think of two better men to help us kind of guide our way toward what the Lord has for us. And so, Adam, Zack, welcome to Man to Men.
Yeah, man. Great to be with you. Jared, thanks for having us on. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, Jared, appreciate you, man. Thanks for having us today.
Well, I appreciate you, man. We've gotten to connect in other circles, and like full transparency, I've been a part of the Acts 29 network and churches for a long time. I have enjoyed the rooms we've gotten to be in together and some of the story that we've gotten to see God do in some of these church plants. So let's just start there. For those unfamiliar, just what is Acts 29 church planting, its history and its impact?
Yeah, Acts 29 is a global church planting network. And right now we've got church plants that exist all over the world. In fact, we were doing some research the other day. Acts 29 churches are holding services in over 25 languages around the world right now, which is incredible. But Acts 29 has a long history of church planting and sending up and raising up and training up church planters to go out and plant in every sort of context that you could imagine. And we're still committed to that work and mission today and are seeing just gospel ground taken all over the world right now. And so Acts 29 has been a network for about 26 years and has just been on the front end and cutting edge of a lot of church planting over the course of those 26 years. And Acts 29 is distinct in certain ways and has some distinctives that we hold ourselves accountable towards and some things that align us together as a network. But our primary focus as a network right now is being the network on mission and making sure that we're seeing churches planted all over the globe. So that's kind of been our, just a quick little 30,000 foot version of our history, but are still committed to that same mission that was started in the early days of Acts 29. We're still committed to that same thing here as we sit here in 2025. So
that's really fun. I love those numbers, not just for the numbers themselves, but for what they indicate as far as some kingdom movement and just some faithfulness. Both you guys could be doing a lot of things. I mean, you're high capacity guys. You've led churches. I think plural churches that you've been a part of. Why this work with Acts 29, Adam and Zack? Like, why church planting for you guys in this season?
Yeah, I mean, personally, if you cut me, I just bleed evangelism. I can't I see it biblically, but just the way I'm shaped, gifted, whatever.
It's probably a gift.
And I really do believe that church planting is the greatest evangelistic strategy there is. And so I think we should share the gospel personally. I think we should do it in our preaching, all of that. But to take the gospel to places where people are unreached and or unengaged, I don't know of a better strategy to make disciples, not just make converts, but make converts and then disciple those converts than church planting. And so that's why I planted a church. That's why for the last 15 years, I've been involved in church planting. And for me, it felt like God kind of has moved me along in this progression to where now some things that I've been exposed to and been a part of in planting, it's like, all right, I can steward this and hand this off to other guys that can take it and do it probably infinitely better than I could have done it. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm in the seat that I'm in now.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this recently. I started the ministry young, kind of right out of high school, early college years, started in ministry roles. And I was sort of coming up in that time when Acts 29 was first kind of coming on the scene and starting to put church planting content and resources out there. And up until that moment, I'd never considered or honestly even heard of church planting before that. And I just remember as a young guy in ministry being shaped by the sort of early days of Acts 29 voices. And as a church planting movement really started to swell here in the States specifically, man, God just used that season of time to kind of capture my heart and give me a vision for what the purpose of church planting is. And similar to what Adam's saying, just what we're seeing as far as missional effectiveness and evangelism thriving in church planting context. And so that was early for me and just paid attention to it and watched it. And I think it was over a set of years that God just sort of just continued to stir that church planting, just that bug in my heart. And so I always knew that God had something for us in that. And never did I think that would end up with me being on this end of things, where I'm actually, working with Acts 29 and being able to work alongside of church planters. So it's kind of a dream come true in a lot of ways. In fact, when I, got an opportunity about 5 years ago to join the team at Acts 29, it was like, man, there is no way that God has been so kind to let me do this. And so it's just been a dream. But so it's been fun to watch, just being a part of church planting stuff, and then also now being a part of church planters' journeys as they go. It is one of the most incredible joys of my life. As I sit here, and I was doing this weekend, just thinking about faces that I've sat in rooms with, and guys who are planting churches actively right now or have in the past few years, and getting to hear their stories. It's one thing to hear data about some of this stuff, but it's another thing to hear firsthand stories and firsthand accounts of pastors and planters who are in the field right now. They're doing the work right now. And they're texting or calling and saying, man, I can't believe what God's done in this place or in this place. And so it just continues to just further my love for what our mission is as a network, and just the absolute privilege it's been for me to be a part of it. So,
it's a lot of rich relationships. One thing I love about both you men and just a lot of the planters that I've met is that you have a heart for the local church, not just this big kind of network or organization. And you put your money where your mouth is. Both of you have pastor churches. Adam, I think you are currently a pastor at a church. So you guys have been in church for a long time. What have you seen God do through the local church that just keeps you fired up for the work of planting?
I don't think we have enough time to tell this. It's like John. If I wrote it all, there wouldn't be enough books. Some of us have to work at a church for God to really we need so much sanctification. God is like, I'm going to put you full time in this thing. Yeah. And then I'm going to put you not just in the church, but I'm going to put you in a church plant that is the key. And so I think I personally needed it. And the Lord just did some amazing work in me. The thing that if nothing else happened, both of my kids, they're grown. They love the Lord. They serve the church. And if you asked them, they would tell you it's because they were involved in a church plant from the time they were little. And so I've seen the Lord work in my kids, and then I just countless stories of lives being changed, marriages being healed, prodigal kids coming home. Just story after story after story. And then to see those people that did have marriages healed and reconciled, raised up, sent out, and now they're planting churches or they're a part of church plants. And so it's beyond anything I could talk about. But yeah.
Man. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, it's it's one of those things when you think about the local church, and again, you just think about stories and moments where you see God's changed a family or this marriage or this person's life. And I was thinking, even in our own church here recently, we've seen this increase in younger sort of college age students who have been showing up to our church. And I think about the second row on my right side, if I'm preaching in our church, those rows that are in the front half are just filled with college students now. And it's been beautiful to think about how, God got a hold of my heart when I was a high school student by a friend inviting me to church and changed the course of my life forever. And now I'm watching that here as a guy in his mid-30s, watching God do the same thing again with other college students who are discovering for the first time these beautiful truths that we've clung to for however many years we've been following Jesus, and see God do that same thing now. And I've been processing that recently, just watching these young college students, like, man, I know what that feels like to be here. And they're coming, they're eager, they've got their Bibles with them, they're hungry, they're bringing friends. And where are these people going to turn to for hope if the church isn't out there on the front lines, making sure that we're raising up the flag of Christ and saying, man, come and hear about Jesus. Come and let us tell you about what he's done. And then we know the good news. We know he's going to change their hearts, and we know he can change lives. And so we get a chance to watch that and be on the front, kind of the front lines of it. So, so the local church it's just fun. You just get to watch the cycle of life change and God just moving in ways that you can never expect or anticipate. It's never boring. There's never a church without its own drama or issues or whatever it may be. But it's the best place on earth to be a part of and to be a part of that journey.
Zach and I have had a lot of conversations over the last few months about what God is doing among particularly young men. I mean, but the collegiate generation. And I would just say, if whoever's listening to this or whatever, like, if you're not paying attention to what God is doing in that young generation right now, go look. It's not hard to find. The Spirit of God is moving in ways, really, I'm 50. I haven't seen in most of my ministry in such a significant way. And statistics are playing it out like, more men in church than women, in this young generation. First time since World War II. I mean, things like Bible sales are at an all-time high. And like Zach said, seeing them in church, it's the same thing. We see them in our church. And so for church planting, I think, the question of like discerning this call to plant, I would just say what Paul says, don't let anybody look down on you because you're young.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't mean you need to plant a church when you're 22 years old. Maybe, but
some of us have tried that before, right?
Yeah, and some guys may need to do that. Some of us may need to wait a minute. But I would just say, if that's a thing stirring you, don't let I'm young be the thing that keeps you from taking the next step in discerning that call and getting involved. Like, we need young guys. We want young guys in the game all along the way in that kind of pipeline and pathway of planting. So I'm so encouraged by what God's doing among young guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, strong word right there just after Paul.
Yeah.
Adam. And even just as Zach talking about what God's doing in this generation, you guys are on the front line seeing it. I think we're seeing a lot of it in Bucks. You're talking with currently on this show with thousands of young college men, but also some men who are recent grads, who some of them like us have been out of school for a few years. And then we've got some listeners that are eyeing retirement right now. A couple of them already in it that I know of. So one of the questions that we're circling here and that I want to drill down on for the men who are listening, whether you're 21 and you're sensing God doing something in your life, or maybe you just came to faith, you've been in faith, and you're riding this quiet revival, is what they're calling it in the US and the UK. Or maybe you're a guy, maybe more our age, and you're thinking, man, I want to learn more about this and maybe see how I can get in on what God is doing. How does a man discern if he might be called to plant or pastor a church?
Yeah, a couple of quick thoughts that I think are just some of the best ways that you can do this. If you have any inclination in your heart, if you're feeling any sort of, even just a nudge in that direction, one of the best things that I think any man can do who's considering it at any age or any stage of life would be just to get exposure to these things. Get around guys who are in ministry, get around your pastor, have these conversations, be in an environment where you can talk about this stuff. Because I know for so many people, and I'm sure we've all had this in our journey, but at some point when God called us to ministry, there was some kind of God-given curiosity. The Spirit of God was stirring something. But then I think it takes somebody else to sit across the table from us and say, hey, this is what this is like. Hey, I actually think I maybe see some of these things in you. Hey, have you thought about leading this? I remember being a younger guy and showed up to the church that I was a part of where God called me to ministry. And I was looking for a college age small group to connect with. And so I sat down with the small groups guy and he said, hey, we actually don't have one, but I think you could be a guy who would do it. And I thought about that in years past, where if that guy did not sit down with me that day and have that conversation, I don't know what path life has for me.
Wow.
God obviously knew, and God was working, and God had that conversation in my life for a reason. But it started with a guy sitting there and asking me, hey man, I think you've got what it takes to do this. Would you consider? And that's where all of these seeds got planted, and ultimately which would lead down the path of church planting. So I think one of the best thing any person can do is just start to get around some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of this in a bit, but one of the things that we try to recommend pretty regularly to any guys in our church planting pipeline that are considering church planting and just trying to discern this question: am I called to plant a church? Should I even consider this path? Yeah. We recommend often go and sit down with a recent church planter. I don't know many church planners that would say no to that invitation. Go and sit down and ask them, hey, tell me about your journey. Tell me about your experience in planting a church. What did God teach you? What did God use to affirm this call in your life? Go and have those conversations and just see if God stirs something in that. And I think that's one of the best ways that you can begin to kind of dip your toes in that water.
Yeah, I think our team developed a tool about a year ago. We call it an apprenticeship. And it is kind of centers around Acts 29, has these core competencies for church planting. And it's not training you to plant, but like Zach said, it's getting you around some people. It's walks you through these core competencies, gives you exposure in light of church planting for you to just say, all right, like, are these things me? Is this what God, do I see this? Do others affirm this in me? Where do I need development? All that. And really the goal at the end of that thing is clarity of call. It's not, am I ready to plant? It's just, do I have clarity about whether I should then pursue to go be equipped, step into a residency, into training, assessments, things like that. Because we just found the I'm interested or this looks interesting to I want to step in and be trained. That's a big step. And there's a lot of questions that have to be answered in that. And so, yeah, we developed that and want to serve the broader church with it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think I want to drill down on that a little later.
Yeah.
I hear this a lot from guys I talk to. You guys mentioned earlier, just feeling a nudge or feeling like something in your heart kind of pushing you toward considering this. I'm sitting with, younger men all the time. And they're talking about how I feel like the Lord's leading me to maybe do this work or to explore it. But then it almost comes exactly right after it. Maybe you guys have heard this too. It's like, I feel like I might be called to some sort of ministry. The Lord may be leading me there, but I don't feel qualified.
Sure.
Adam, how would you answer that, man?
Yeah, you're talking a passion of mine. About 10 years ago, I jumped into a doctoral program, and I guess it was 2019. I was looking to write the dissertation, and I picked a topic. I thought it was super interesting, but nobody was going to care about it at all. But what I constantly was hearing was, hey, I feel like God is telling me to do whatever, fill in the blank, church planting, move, take this job, whatever. And, there's sort of the cynical side is like, well, God told you to do this, and then God told me to do the opposite. So who's right?
Sure.
But I mean, this as a pastor, you really do want people to follow the Holy Spirit. That's what following Christ looks like. I mean, he put the Spirit of Christ in us to conform us to Christ and to look like Christ and to live like Christ. And so I genuinely want people to follow the Spirit. And so, yeah, that's where I ended up writing, because I wanted people to do that. And I think if somebody's feeling that, I think you can just ask a few questions, honestly, is like, whose glory is this really about? Like, is it my glory or God's glory? Because the Holy Spirit always glorifies God. It always puts the spotlight on God. So if this is about you, it's probably not from the Holy Spirit. And you got to dig around. That's a big deal. Zach hit on this. What do others say that know Jesus and know me before I make this decision? Right? You've always had somebody come and like mask, I want your opinion, but what they really want is just you to bless a decision they've already made. So I think if guys can have the humility to go to somebody and be like, hey, Jared, before I do this, I need you to be really honest. You know me, you know the Lord. Do you see this in me?
Yeah.
Because the worst thing we can do is just affirm something that we don't see in somebody or point them. It just doesn't go well. Obviously, Scripture, like if Scripture says do it, do it. Scripture says don't do it, don't do it. You don't need to discern that. The Lord discerned it. And then I think prayer's a huge piece of that. Like, have you really abided with Jesus in this thing? The story I always tell is like our old house, our bedroom was on one side and our kids' bedrooms are on the other, and it was one story, it had hardwood. I could be in my bedroom and hear footsteps, and I could tell you exactly who was coming in the room because I had abided with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think often we just pray and go, Lord, do you want me to do this? And then we move on. And it's like, have you really rested and abided so you know if this smells like Jesus?
That's good. I often have that conversation too, and I'm just like, man, so what you said is so true. If it's in the Bible, it's clear. So are you doing those things first?
Right.
Is what like, are you doing the clear things first?
Right.
Where you know this is what he's telling you to do.
For sure.
Not looking for perfection, just looking for obedience. Like, is that there?
Right.
Kind of along those lines, Zach, you'd mentioned just taking a lot of joy in guys who've taken the jump, taken the risk. Is there a story that comes to mind to you of a younger man maybe, who took the risk to plant and saw God move in powerful ways?
Actually, I thought about this one recently. This is a guy outside of an Acts 29 circle, but I think it totally relates and would translate over. He was actually, he started, this was probably 10 years ago, maybe more than that. He was in his late 20s, early 30s, and he was kind of having a life shift. Like, already had a career, and God was stirring something in him, and he was trying to ask and discern through some of these same questions that we're talking about here. And I remember he showed up to our church one day, and I met him, and I could tell there was something there that this guy was thinking through. So we grabbed coffee, and he said, man, here's who I am. Here's where I'm at. And I think God may be calling me to ministry. And he knew this means a big shift in my life. I'm going to give a career up and do something different. He was willing to take an internship in his early 30s, making virtually nothing, having to go figure out how he was going to make it most of the time, just to get his hands dirty in ministry and see, like, man, is this right for me? Well, fast forward 10 years later, this guy just helped, he's planted now 2 campuses of a larger church in my town, church I used to be a part of. And he's now planted a second one. The first one's up and thriving. Now he's planted the second one in his hometown. And I met with him recently, and it was just so fun to see the journey for him of the first day that I met him to now a guy who's been doing it for 10 years. But it started with him taking this big step of faith, discerning through this call that he felt like the Spirit of God was stirring in his life. And frankly, in his case, being willing to take some big risks to jump into that. And because if it doesn't work out, who knows what happened? He just gave up his career for it. And the Lord has just been really faithful to him and has grown him and has developed him. And it didn't come fast. This is a 10-year journey that he's been on.
Yeah.
But he was willing to put in the work. He was willing to humble himself and get better at the things he needed to get better at, get experience in things he had never led before. But he just knew, man, God's calling me to something here. Now he's been a part of planting 2 pretty successful church plants that are seeing successful in the way of gospel impact. They're seeing people come to faith in these places, and God's changing lives, and God's using this guy to pastor people really, really, really well. And I've been proud of him, and that's a journey that I think God has for a lot of young guys. Humble yourself, step into something. Oftentimes it takes a lot of risk. It's scary. It's unknown, but it starts like that.
Yeah. Now, I'm picking up themes from what both of you guys are talking about in this conversation. There are some themes. There are patterns of humility, obedience, patience. These are tough things. These are things that really do challenge a man. So how have you guys seen planting a church form a man? Not just around necessarily just his gifts and talents, but spiritual maturity, emotional maturity. This is kind of where we want to glean from some of your experiences and even just how you coach and train and teach and equip church planters. Yeah.
I mean, I planted in 2010. In 2016, handed off the lead pastor role. One of our lay elders is now the lead pastor of that church, and it's continued on.
Wow.
But nothing exposed my idols, like my deep idols, like church planting. And I thought I had done a lot of the work. You know what I mean? I thought I had a pretty good grip, not perfection, but I just thought, and it really brought out some of my, my deep comfort of idol of comfort. And nothing will wring out an idol of comfort like church planting. Like even one that's going really well, it will portable, all of that, people coming and going. So, I mean, I saw God just wring some of those things out of me. I saw a lot of my how deep success was embedded in me. And I don't just mean big, I just meant more. It could have just been one more person, but that got exposed. So there were all kinds of things personally in my life that I experienced. Fear of man issues, things like that all got brought out and wrung out of me. And it's like Hebrew, it's painful at the time, but I look back on it and I go, man, I'm so grateful for God, not just to bring the quote unquote successes, but to expose some of those other things in my life and wring them out of me.
Man, so Zach, as you're helping church planters, how do you help a guy like a young Adam Flynt who's facing those things head on?
It's a lot. It's hard. That's a full-time job for Zach.
Yeah, that's true. That's my other half of my job. No, Adam is right. And one of the fun things for me is I've been in and around Acts 29 for long enough now to kind of just notice trends and watch these things and sort of chart out what are we seeing in healthy church planters that are going to flourish in that next season versus guys who aren't. And one of the greatest things that the greatest common denominator, which shouldn't surprise us in the least if we spend time in our Bibles, but for some reason, we tend to forget these things. But I genuinely think a guy who is humble and who is teachable and who is patient, those guys are the guys that I think make some of the best church planters.
That's right.
Because, and we're seeing it over and over again, when a guy comes in, when we meet a guy in his church planting assessment, for instance, which is kind of the middle part of our church planting pipeline, when we meet a guy in that space, you can almost tell the first day, how teachable is this guy? And how teachable is he would tell us how humble he's been and how teachable he's been prior to that assessment.
Yeah.
Well, like Adam is saying, the reality is you're going to step into this is true of ministry, and then I think it's obviously taken to another level in church planting context. You're facing things almost daily that you've never had experience in before. No matter how much training you've had, prep you've had, all these things, doesn't matter. You're going to be faced with something in a church planting context that you've never had to deal with before, whether it be a crisis situation in your church, some sort of building issue or next planning thing or whatever it is. And some of the guys who are the most humble are who are going to pick up the phone and say, hey, Adam, Jared, I need help. Man, I have no idea how to handle this. Can I learn from you? Our church is struggling in this season. Can you help coach me through this? Those are the guys that I think are going to make it through, which shouldn't surprise us at all, right? This is Philippians 2 type stuff. But the church planters who have that Philippians 2 type humility, I think are the ones that really do flourish. And we all know this. I think the Lord blesses that in his people. God wants it. He desires it of us, wants us to be that way. So I'm always looking at that. Where we don't see that, that's where I'm always going to try to push guys as hard as I can. Be humble, be teachable, submit yourself to others. If you don't have anybody else who's affirming these things in your life, that's a red flag for me. Something's going on here. So just be in a place and be humble and be submitted for long enough that you've learned through that.
I think along those lines, the word that pops into my mind when I think about what Zach is talking about is meekness. And we think meek means weak. And we often think humble means passive.
Yeah.
And meekness is actually like a horse riding term. It's like an equestrian term, like bit in the mouth is what it is. And meekness is just, you think of like a thoroughbred horse that unrestrained, it's just raw power all over the place. But you put this bit in its mouth, and then all of a sudden, it's all of that power and all of that pointed in a direction. And so I think that humility is like, hey, we don't want you to be less entrepreneurial. We don't want you to be less driven. It's just let's put a bit in there and let the Lord direct that thing and channel it. And that humility that Zach is talking about is the willingness to go, yep, help me, direct me. And so it's taking this power and gifting that God has given a man and then putting humility alongside of it. And when you get those things working together, it's really, really incredible to watch.
Man. Yeah, I think you guys are pushing back on just so many of the narratives sometimes we think of around church planting and even pastoring.
Right.
Sometimes we tend to think of kind of your God's hired gun. You parachute in here and you kind of like bring order to this church, and what you say goes, and you can do it on your own. It's just me and God. But one of the ways that you guys are kind of starting to bring out here that I'm hearing is that community is a part of that humility and that power that a man needs to plant and to pastor a church. So how does a strong marital community, a strong marriage, just having other brothers and a submission to fellow elders shape a man for the kind of leadership you guys are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think a plurality of local elders is vital. I mean, because I think it's biblical, but I also think from an experiential side, I think there are appropriate times where a board of elders checks one another. But more than that, I think is it a band of brothers that can push one another forward, spur one another on? And so I would just say, if you're an elder in a church and you think your job is to be the brake all the time, maybe, but not all. When was the last time you spurred on to that and pushed on? And yeah, so I don't see elders. I think getting local elders at the right time is critical, not too soon, not too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's actually more power if you train and select the right elders in the right context with the right biblical qualifications, that you don't have to be the lone hired gun. You actually can be you can have a few guns in the holster. You know what I mean? You right. All can be pushing forward. And and then just the other thing is, I mean, you mentioned marriage. I believe so much in pastors' wives and planters' wives. And I mean, as a network, we're complementarian. And I believe that should elevate women in their gifting and elevate wives to be all that God created them and called them to be. And that doesn't mean they have to be unpaid staff and all that. But
right.
Man, I just in my experience when I was planting, nobody had more influence in my ear than my wife. And I'm so grateful for it, that she loved the Lord, was in the Word, had a deepening faith, was listening to the Spirit, and could stand not just behind me and cheer me on, but could stand shoulder to shoulder with me. And I could be the pastor, I could be an elder, she could be my wife. But I think there's a real beauty when God equally yokes up a man and a woman and then sends that family to plant together. So
it's powerful.
Yeah.
What you thinking, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adam is completely right on, and not to just sort of plug Acts 29 and what we're doing with our planters, but I mean, legitimately, we believe it. What he just said, we believe in that so much. We're sort of programming towards those in with our planters. We're helping them develop elders the right way. We want to make sure that that's done in a healthy and proper way. We're also putting a big emphasis around planters' wives. And in fact, we were on a training a couple of weeks ago with some of our planters, and I think it was Adam who said this. One of the most important people in your church plant is your wife. And we just sort of stopped and let that simmer for a minute. This is important. This is a significant deal. And where you don't have those things, I think you're in a ton of trouble. And I would say, three things that need to be there for any planter to just kind of keep ourselves in check and safeguard us. Because the reality is, at least what we see in planters, there tends to be or can be a leaning, if you're entrepreneurial enough to plant a church, you can be the kind of the independent, I'm going to go take the hill guy that needs people around you to sort of rein some of those things in. We don't want to hold that back. Like you need that. One of our competencies of a planter is entrepreneurial aptitude. So we want to see that. We want to see it flourish, but we want to see it flourish in the right way. And so if you have healthy elders around you, if your spouse is with you in this, and I think, guys, and this is, hopefully it's an elder as well, but you've got to have friendships where you are just able to be you. You're not everyone's pastor all the time, 24/7. Who are your friends who just know you as, not as pastor, but just as Zach or as Adam or as Jared? Who are those people? Do you have those relationships flourishing? That matters so much. I think all of us have probably missed those at some point in our ministry journey. And and we were probably worse off for it. So yeah, those three types of relationships.
I think you're so right. My pastor calls them corner toters, mat toters. And the idea that Jesus is preaching, the guys take the paralytic, raise him up on the roof, and they lower him down.
That's good.
And it's like, do you just have 3 or 4 guys? You don't need 20, but you just have 3 or 4 that if you can't do for yourself would rip a roof off, lower you down, and put you in front of Jesus. And you can be paralyzed in front of them, and they'll get you to Jesus and love you enough to do what it takes. So I think Zach's exactly right. You need some of those guys in your life.
Man, that's good. And just to plug the episode before this one, we had Travis Cunningham, who is pastor out in Rancho Cucamonga, California, talk about some of these very things as well. So as you guys are kind of listening to this little Am I Called series, just know that first episode is with Travis is you're going to hear a lot of similar language there. I'm interested to talk with you guys because you brought up the current generation, or at least the upcoming generation, Gen Z. Maybe, in fact, I think they're already here. I think they've arrived, and they are arriving. We talked about some excitement among them, but then, and I've got to be honest with you two, and just with all of our buddies here on the podcast. I've been a little down on my fellow millennials. I'm a geriatric millennial, kind of leading edge there. Elder statesmen, and then some Gen Xers. Just as far as some things we're seeing in the church, what with what you guys are seeing, where do millennials and even Gen Xers need to be challenged around what you see God doing in His church these days?
So I think back to when I was 22, 23, 24 years old, and I was fresh out of seminary. I'd worked on Young Life staff, so I was green in the church world. And I stepped in to a church plant as an associate pastor in a church plant. It's portable, all that sort of stuff. And the pastor there probably let me preach 40% of the time.
Wow.
And
brave man.
Yeah. And I would part of my admonition would be not to what's wrong or fix this millennials or Gen Xers, but I bet most of us have stories where somebody older, further along, took a risk on us and gave us the chance. And I would just say, remember, this is Jesus's church. This is not your church. Jesus said He will build His church. And so give some guys some chance. I'm not saying you have to let everybody up front. Let the right people at the right time, give them the right steps, but don't be afraid. Give the guys the keys and let them drive it for a minute. Because that was so critical. I look back and go, I can't believe that guy did that. I look back at some of those messages and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Hopefully before the digital age, right?
Thank goodness. But I couldn't get to be a better preacher if they hadn't let me preach. I couldn't get to be a better leader if He hadn't put me in the room with the leaders.
Right.
And so I would just say, if you're down the road a little bit and you hold the position of leadership that would look to a young guy, and I would just go, man, figure out a way to draw them in. You be the one that proactively grabs them and says, I see something in you. Come on. Come with me.
That's good. Adam, it's funny, man. I had the same, I took my first pastoral position at 22 or 23. And I look back at that and I'm like, who in the world took a risk with me? I mean, it's insane. Yeah. But we need that, right?
Yeah.
Now, did I have too much too soon? Who knows? But nonetheless, we need that. And I would say I agree with everything Adam just said. On the other end of that, I would look at young people and say, man, if you're in your church, you're plugged in, I would love to see more of this next generation start to step up and raise their hands and say, hey, I think God may be doing something here. And man, I would love to be a part. I would love to see more. I think God's stirring in hearts right now. And I think hopefully, Lord willing, the next evolution of this is young people standing up and realizing, hey, you know what? We really are the next generation of leaders in the church. And that the time for training and preparation and readiness, that is now. And It's going to start, like Adam said, with some bad sermons and some embarrassing moments. Like I can think back to 100 different things that I was in early on in ministry. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was bad advice, or that was bad counseling, or that was a bad sermon, or whatever it is. That comes with the territory. But where are those young men who are going to step up and say, hey, I think God's stirring something here and I want to step into it. Who here can help train me? Who here can I learn under? Who's going to let me lead the Bible study for the first time? Who can let me try to preach and figure this out as I go? I want to do that.
Right.
So I would say young people, I would love to see that be the next iteration of this, where young folks are stepping up and being willing to take a risk for it.
Man, well, we touched on it a little earlier, but I wanted to come back around to it because we talked about all God's doing in the U.S. and globally, and you guys have a unique perspective on that, just sitting in the seats you're at in 829. So what would you say to our men? You got, like tens of thousands of guys that are going to listen to this. Why do you believe now is a strategic moment for men to plant new churches in the U.S. and globally?
Yeah, I'll say this. There was an article that came out years ago. This was 2017, 18, 19, somewhere there. A guy named Bob Thune wrote it. And he was writing at the time about the church planting pipeline drying up. And if you Google that article, you can still find it. It's out there. I think Bob even may have been a couple years early, but I think what he was at was right. And kind of connecting back to that last thought that I just had about young men stepping up, like at the end of the day, we need more church planters. We need them right now. The church planting pipeline is slowed down in every denomination, every network. It's been true across the board. Now, some of that has been because I don't think we've been helping to train guys up in the way that we need to. So there's a big piece of that comes with, and how are we equipping guys for this task and making sure that they're prepared for it so that they don't walk into something they feel like they can't handle. But I think it comes too with, we need that moment to step up and say, yeah, there will not be churches planted unless we have planters to plant them. They don't plant themselves. All of the churches that we sit in week after week, whoever it is listening to this, wherever you're at in the country or the world right now, somebody at some point in time took a risk to plant the church that you're in. It started somewhere. And you have benefited, whether it be through your family being a part of that church, or maybe one day your kids or your kids now are part of that church. You're sort of reaping the benefits of someone being willing to take that risk, and we need it. I mean, statistic after statistic we could sit here and share about how effective young church plants are in evangelism compared to more established churches. And those statistics aren't lies; they're true. Younger church plants have a zeal, sort of this missional zeal to them, because that's what they're there for. And so we need that. We need men to take risk. So that's the biggest piece right now. I think we need more church planters. We need them now, but not to just rush guys into it. I mean, we need guys to step into church planting pipelines right now in every sort of background, every network, to say, hey, I want to get trained so that your church can get planted in 10 years from now and you feel ready to go. But it starts with maybe 10 years of work before you're ready for that. So,
that long game, at least from our perspective.
Too, for sure, we've talked a lot about young guys stepping into this thing. So come on, exactly what Zach said. But then I think there's a bunch of guys who are thinking it's too late for me. And I would go, no, it's not. No, it's not. Like, you can look around. I mean, we have modern day examples of guys who planted later or had pastored churches for a while, or planted and then plant again.
Yeah.
And you have a ton. I mean, I think of Ray Ortland and those guys who, like, what if he hadn't planted? What we would have missed had guys like him or Keller even, I mean, so don't let sort of the youth culture, for some of you, it's, hey, you have some things in your seasoned experience to offer. And then, if there's tens of thousands of guys listening to this, tens of thousands aren't thinking I'm called to go be the pastor of a church. But that doesn't mean you're any less called or have something to offer. Man, I think if you're like in a day job in the marketplace and God has not called you out of that, one, you've got a mission field in front of you.
Amen.
To share the gospel, invite your friends, go get a part of a church plant. Go find a church plant, become a part of it. Or if you've got a buddy that's feeling called to plant, pull up next to him and be like, hey man, I will be your Jonathan.
Yeah,
like
he needs
I will be the guy that'll stand next to you, and I'll do whatever you need me to do. You want me to park cars? I'll park cars. You want me to push cases? I'll push cases. You want me to do the books? I'll do the books. Whatever. And then I can't tell you what wind in the sails that would be to another guy who feels called to go plant. And so just don't think it's either I'm 30 years old and stepping into my first lead pastor job as a church planter, or it can't happen.
Yeah.
There's so many other ways that guys listen to this can jump in and pour gas on that fire.
Adam, you're right. I even think financially about some of that. Like we have conversations all the time with how expensive church planting can be, at least in the United States context. Some guys, you may be called to be the best entrepreneur, business executive, whatever it may be. You may be a doctor, or whatever it is. And those oftentimes are some of the most generous people that are supporting church planters. We had a guy who called in Acts 29 just a handful of weeks ago looking to support X amount of church planters. And the guy's just been successful and had money, wanted to give away and wanted to be generous with it and wanted it to go towards church planters. And I was telling some of our planters, hey, you may get a call, and just their faces when they heard, hey, this random person who just, I guess, has a lot of money somewhere that'll probably never meet me.
Yeah.
It's their biggest joy.
Yeah. Well,
but they were blown away.
It's like manna. It's just, oh, wow. It's just appeared.
Yeah. But that's ministry for some folks, right? Like I would never be ashamed of that. If God calls you to that, man, be as generous as you can possibly be. And know that you're having a gospel impact by doing that.
Let's get 829 specific. What is the network doing to just offer some help and send this incoming generation of planters?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, all this kind of stuff that we're talking about looking kind of into the past and looking towards the future and to set the network up for the next 25 years. It's not rocket science, but we just said we want to develop a pipeline. We want to bring some clarity to wherever you are, where's your next step in church planting? And so we look at it, a pipeline from I'm interested, or maybe a pastor sees something in you. And so how do we identify and recruit guys towards church planting? And so we've begun to develop a whole side of Acts 29 around that. And then some of that apprenticeship that we talked about helps guys in that discernment, in that identifying and recruiting and discerning. So it's a tool for churches, it's a tool for individuals. We're just about done, like in weeks, we'll be finished with a full-blown residency that really does, if you're called, this will equip you in your calling towards being able to go to assessment, being able to plant. And then we can, from that residency, we can actually move on towards assessment. We've always had a really robust assessment. And assessment's not so much a gate to keep you out as we want to come alongside of you and go, hey, we want to leverage 25 years and 1,000 church plants to help you, plant the best you can. And then we've intentionally put 2 sets of cohorts, coaching relationships, after you go through assessment so that nobody launches alone. And then we want to coach specifically to get guys to be self-funded, self-governing, and self-replicating. So that whole pipeline has now been developed. It's now been staffed, resourced, and programming around that. And so if you're considering planting, wherever you are in that journey, you can kind of step in at the appropriate place.
No, that's good. Well, guys, just wrapping up here today, a little rapid fire here at the end. Who is a church planter or a young leader or pastor that you would want the guys listening to tune into or follow or read?
I think a lot, we were talking about Jason Shepard. I think some of the stuff Jason is doing, some of the work Jim Essien has done, both those are Texas guys.
Yeah.
I think there are some young guys that nobody has ever heard of.
Right.
We're doing some work right now with a group of Portuguese speaking Brazilian guys in the Southeast. And so, man, you could pay attention to them, but I would maybe even just more categorically is like this whole issue of like, what happens when missionaries start showing up in the United States, not just the United States showing up and planting, these churches among Portuguese speakers or among Hispanic speakers, things like that. So I'm watching a lot of that really closely. I think we have a ton to learn from them, and I'm keeping my eye on Europe. I mean, they are clearly post-secular. We are stepping into that post-secular. I think we have a lot to learn from guys like Philip Murr in Paris, Karim in Turkey. So
good. Yeah, he stole my biggest one. Just to highlight those guys the guys we're working with down in Central Florida right now, I think are massive. We have a great couple up and coming leaders. I think in Acts 29 right now, a guy named Taylor Burgess in South Carolina is just an absolute beast. But it's just, he's fountain of wisdom, great guy to learn from. There's a friend of mine named Ian Thomas who's down in Lakeland, Florida as well, who I think is just an incredible leader who's got just a lot of wisdom when it comes to church planting. His church plant specifically is flourishing. And I think some of the things that they're working on right now to train future generations of planters across Florida is really compelling stuff. So those would be a couple guys on my list.
Oh, so good. Well, guys, how can we check out X29, find you both, and find the work of the network?
Yeah, if you want to head over to x29.com, that's where you're going to find most of our things. A direct link that I think would probably be helpful for a lot of guys who are listening to this. If you go to x29.com/training, that's going to have a lot of the resources that we've talked about. So you can learn more about our apprenticeship. You can learn more about our residency. You can see our kind of online platform. We house a lot of these things. So go there and find that. And that stuff should be free and available. You don't have to be a part of Acts 29 to go and look at those things. So we'd love to let other people learn from that stuff. So start there primarily. I'm a ghost when it comes to social media. I don't have anything, so I'm not an easy follow. Adam may be more relevant for that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Find us on the web, connect on social media, and then if you just have questions, we would love, anybody on our team would love to connect with you or a pastor in the network. We can put you, in contact with somebody close to you. So if you just hear this and you go, I don't know what to do other than just reach out. Reach out. Just send an email to whoever you want to send an email to in Acts 29. We'll get it to the right person. We'll connect with you and get you going in the right direction.
Man, that's good. Adam, Zach, good to hang with you, brothers. Thank you for coming on Man to Men today.
Love it. Thanks for what you're doing. This is great. I love it. I'm so glad that you stepped into this and are leading this, and love what you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you, bro.
Thanks, Jared.
Man to Men is powered by Beta Upsilon Chi, commonly referred to as Bucks. Everywhere, every day, Bucks men are raising families, leading in organizations, and strengthening churches to impact our communities for Christ. You can find out more about Beta Upsilon Chi by transliterating our Greek letters and adding a .org. That's byx.org. Man to Men is produced, rather well, I might add, by the good gentlemen of the Good Podcast Company. For Beta Upsilon Chi, I'm Dr. Jared Musgrove with Man to Men.